we're all getting older, and the benefits to, or the fun that comes along with having muscle and being whether it's for powerlifting or for aesthetic reasons, it declines a little bit as we get older, because we see that, and this is why a lot of athletes get a little bit depressed as they get older, because we see that we can't necessarily get to where we could have before. It slowly declines. Have you started to change your focus away from bodybuilding and aesthetics, but maintaining your interest in changing your biological function? And particularly, I want to ask you about two subjects, which is cognitive enhancement, which I know you're interested in, and longevity, which I don't know if you're interested in.
So yeah, is my focus going to shift as I age? In the beginning, when I didn't realize that I would even have the potential to get as huge as I could, because I still believed in the fake natty thing. Even though I was studying all the chemistry, the fake natty thing still had me under its influence. I figured I could just keep pushing my body to its limit my whole life and just keep improving. I didn't realize the plateau was going to happen so low. I didn't realize, I thought that the natural plateau was up here, not down here. So, but then once I started getting good at the chemistry and realizing how much muscle I could put on and have, because now the sky's the limit. I could become a mass monster as big as anybody else now, knowing the chemistry. I don't want to do that now, because I can't, even if I put on 10 pounds right now, then I can't sleep. I can't breathe. I can't move around. I'm tired going upstairs. And it's not every big muscular guy experiences this, but ones with smaller frames like me, and that are not meant, genetically meant to be smaller bones, smaller people, having that extra muscle is just so unnatural. So I want to be bigger than what's natural. I want to be this size for a while longer. I wish I would have started chemistry earlier, when it would have been healthier for me to be really big and just done that for once in my life and pushed the limit and been extremely uncomfortable, when it wouldn't tax my health so much. But now the wonderful thing about the chemistry is it's a shortcut to be able to have an awesome physique without putting that much effort in. And once I knew the chemistry was there to be as big as I wanted to be, then yes, it was like, okay, well, I definitely am not going to keep going on this path of getting bigger. I'll figure out how to keep doing it smarter and healthier. And that was the initial intent when I first started steroids too. It was like, okay, I'm going to do a steroid cycle, and then I'm just going to cruise on SARMs and just like make slow progress. I didn't realize how powerful SARMs were. I thought SARMs at the time were just going to maintain the muscle. I didn't realize you could actually like grow. I figured like steroids will bring you here, but if you stop steroids, you'll come back down here. But if I can steroids to get here and just keep the SARMs going there, then that's the perfect balance of health, longevity, and also looking and feeling awesome. So I did always intend to shift to health and longevity. It was also a passion of mine at a young age, because I wanted to live forever, and death scared me. And to be honest, it was a fear of death that caused me to become interested in longevity. But then I started realizing, like, I was studying so much and reading so much research about longevity, and the telomeres and all these things that I studied so long ago, I can't even remember all of it. But then I realized, like, how do people really die? Like, people don't usually die of just old age. They, something hits them along the way: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, accidents, murder, domestic violence, whatever. So it's like, okay, if we say, okay, I'm most likely to die of heart disease, then let's address that and not worry about the stuff down here, because that's what's going to kill me. And then once I've figured that out, then let's say, okay, what's the next most likely thing to kill me? And what I find is the most likely thing to kill me, the root foundation of everything, is stress. Because that makes all of the possible ways I could die more likely. So that's what I've been trying to get to as my longevity approach now, is more along the lines of the stress and the mental side of things. And
that goes to the cognitive enhancement portion that we were talking about.
That's how it all fits together, yeah.
And I actually really think similarly. I know you take a beta blocker sometimes. I've been doing that for a couple of years now for similar reasons, to try to disrupt this HPA axis because it's really dangerous. Briefly, I wanted to ask you, have you ever had your genetics tested?
Yes.
Have you had them analyzed? I mean, do you know what ApoE variant you are, your CETP gene for cardiovascular disease? Do you know the details? Because they
Yeah, I
are.
have it all in a report. Yeah.
Oh, you do. So do you know your FOXO3? Do you know what longevity genes you have, or not really?
I mean, I could pull it up. I won't take time to the podcast
No,
to
of
pull it.
course.
Maybe if you want to look at my genetic report and we can publicly talk about my genetic report, I'd be willing to do that in the future. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love to just give you a couple of tips for free because there's a couple of things, if you learn about them, you can really know how dangerous your cardiovascular. I mean, let's talk about this. I was going to ask you later, what biomarkers do you look at to manage your health? I mean, in terms of blood tests, biomarkers.
Yeah, so I usually get just the whole general steroid, men's health, longevity panel, like the normal panel from, let's say, like a hospital. And in the US, I use the private MD labs, for example, and I'll order that online, and I'll just order the $350 package, basically like the full panel. When I'm in other countries, then I'll just test. It's for what I'll get full tests also, but then I'll test whatever I'm doing for a specific experiment. So I don't usually just test to test how I'm doing at any one time. It's usually like, okay, I'm messing with my hormone levels, so I'm going to test all the hormones and everything downstream from that to see how it's impacting me. Because I've done so many tests about my general health that all just come back the same every time. It's just kind of repetitive, not much changing.
Do you mind mentioning like what your LDL cholesterol is generally on average?
Yeah, LDL is bad.
Well, which number though? What area? What region? Is it like 150? Is it 70? Is it?
I don't watch LDL too much.
Hard to remember.
I watch HDL very closely because that's one I was most fascinated in because I've always been low.
Well, the interesting thing about HDL is HDL cholesterol is not very informative because it's not the HDL particle count. Sure, the HDL cholesterol compared to the LDL cholesterol as a ratio is informative, but you really want to, if you, in the future, by the way, if you do an HDL particle test, not a HDL cholesterol test, that will be really informative because that's involved in reverse cholesterol transport. But, you know, people in bodybuilding, they often don't realize how low LDL has to be to avoid atherosclerosis. Anything above a level of 60 on LDL cholesterol, from research we know, is you're developing plaque. And so most bodybuilders I know that think they have good LDL cholesterol, they have about 150 to 170, and they're developing plaque rapidly. And so, you know, all the autopsies we know of bodybuilders have had severe atherosclerosis. And it's not necessarily because...
Yeah, I've got one of my lab reports up here that says my LDL was 163, which the normal range is less than 100, so very elevated. Yeah.
Well, the normal range is just based on averages. It doesn't mean anything about the health effects. Like anything above 70, you should be worried about atherosclerotic plaque development. Now, that doesn't mean that you would die from the plaque development. Some people never get heart attacks. They have severe atherosclerosis. But it just means you're developing that. So at anything above 150 or so, you have it. But it's not too high, and there's some medications you can take that could not harm your bodybuilding too much, but could reduce that LDL cholesterol. Like there's one called ezetimibe, very interesting medication because it just prevents your absorption of dietary cholesterol. And it prevents the liver from being able to take cholesterol out of the bile. And it doesn't have many other side effects. So it's pretty interesting. There's some, little tricks there. Another thing I want to ask you, do you do scans, like ultrasounds of your kidneys or fMRI scans of your liver and heart?
Yeah, I've had the ultrasound done of my heart, liver, and kidneys. Yeah.
You haven't done an fMRI of your heart, though.
What's fMRI stand for?
fMRI is when you go in that machine and you have to keep breathing weirdly. It takes hours, and it's the ultrasound is just a machine they put on.
I did have I think it was an MRI, but it was for calcium scoring.
Oh, that's a CT scan.
Okay, so
that's,
the CT
by the way,
scan,
very dangerous. That's very dangerous. Really high levels of radiation can cause cancer for sure. Very dangerous. Now, the thing about the CT scan, by the way, it's a little confusing because in bodybuilding, they always tell you, hey, some people say like, oh, I have a 0 calcium score. This is great for me. What do you have? And so people go and get the CT scan, not realizing the CT scan is one of the strongest radiation scans that exist. And the problem is calcium only builds up in the arterial structure to actually, it's a healing process for the plaque. And it happens about a decade later. So it's very unlikely at your age that you would have much calcium. Did you have much?
No.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't. This was a waste. You want to only check that really after 60 or so. What you want to check is the fMRI just to make sure there's no blockages in the heart. I did one here at Cedar Sinai. Like, I have a good guy here if you want to go to LA to get it. You need to have a very good technician to study the actual results, because the doctor doesn't know much. It's the technician that's looking at the machine, which is a very expensive machine, to see how the blood flow is going around in your heart, to make sure that it doesn't seem there's any major blockages. And if there are any, they'll put a stent to force that artery open so you don't get the heart attack.
So the last heart scan I had was the ultrasound, and the technician spent a really long time, because I said, look, I'm doing this for a documentary for Enhanced 2. It didn't end up in the documentary, but I did a very thorough analysis for the documentary in case it wanted to be included. And so he was really thorough with it, and my heart came back perfect in every way. Like the injection fraction, the beat, I don't remember all the different factors, but it was like perfect down the whole list.
You weren't in the machine though. You were just, he had like okay, got it. And your kidneys are doing well, hopefully?
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. So there was no heart enlargement, which no left ventricular hypertrophy, none of that. Yeah. And then liver and kidneys, ultrasound, everything was flawless. The reason why the doctor ordered the ultrasound is because my liver values are always elevated. I mean,
your alpha fetoprotein or just your ALT, AST? The alpha fetoprotein is what's used to measure the development of liver cancer, which can be really random sometimes. You might not have elevated ALT, AST.
My AST and ALT is always elevated, and then my gamma GT is normal. So it's just AST, ALT, which can be a result of working out and a number of different things that don't necessarily mean there's any permanent damage happening. It's just an enzyme response. So
in about 30% of people that have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is very common in the US, they do not even have elevated ALT or AST. So it's almost a given that if you have an elevated ALT, AST, you have fatty liver disease, and you would do great with a fast. The reason why, when the ALT and AST are elevated, that means you have inflammation at the liver. Especially if your C-reactive protein is also elevated, you're having inflammation there. When the liver has the inflammation, it starts to store more fat on the liver when it does de novo lipogenesis, which means the creation of fat. Especially if you're eating like a fructose diet or eating sugars and carbs and stuff like that. And if you can get rid of the fat from there, your midsection will get smaller, and your general body inflammation will get better, and your insulin sensitivity will get better too.